Do you believe that the greatest terror in Middle-earth was Sauron? That the most perilous dangers lay in battles between armies or in the rings of power? Then get ready to deconstruct everything you thought you knew. There is a creature that predates kings, wars, and even the Dark Lord himself, a being so ravenous, so eager to devour light, that even Melkor, the very first villain of Tolkien, trembled in its presence. And the most frightening part, its legacy lives on to this day, in the shadows of the forests, in forgotten cobwebs, in the darkest corners of history. Few dare speak of it. Even fewer manage to understand what it truly represents. We're talking about Ungoliant, the mother of spiders, the endless hunger, the void that swallows everything. And no, this isn't just a fable about ancient monsters. It's a deep dive into dark archetypes, into metaphors that mirror our own human nature. Because if you think that giant spiders are merely fantasy creatures, maybe you're not paying attention to what's consuming you today. In this episode, you will discover the hidden origins of the most feared creatures of the First Age. You'll learn how a single entity shaped fear, chaos, and even the fate of Middle-earth, and how all of that echoes in our decisions, insecurities, and deepest desires. And the best part? You don't have to be a Tolkien scholar to follow along. We'll guide you step by step through this tangled web of stories, revelations, and lessons that go far beyond fantasy. Now I ask you, are you ready to uncover what lies behind the darkness? And what if the real terror isn't out there, but that which we let grow inside us? There are creatures so ancient that their origins are lost in time like dust carried by the winds of the ages. Ungoliant was one of them. Emerging from the deepest darkness of Arda, no one really knows whether she was a rebellious spirit or a corrupted fragment of what existed even before light itself. Tolkien shows us that in Middle-earth, mystery isn't the absence of explanation, it's an invitation to wonder. How else can we explain the birth of a hunger for light, if not as the reflection of something that was born incomplete? This is the essence of the shadow. To desire everything and yet be nothing. And look, this isn't just about a monstrous spider lost in legends. We're talking about a force that even defied the Valar, the gods of creation. Imagine encountering a creature that rejected Melkor, the Lord of Fear, simply because it harbored greater ambitions. This isn't just about power. It's a ravenous, insatiable pride, the kind that is never quenched even by destruction. In Middle-earth, spiders, like Ungoliant, aren't merely monsters. They are reflections of human desires pushed to their extreme, unbridled ambition, and endless hunger. They say she emerged from a darkness that preceded time, and perhaps that is the most unsettling part. Because deep down, we all carry a bit of that void, that voice whispering that we're still not enough, that something is always missing. And what if that voice took shape? That's exactly what Tolkien did. He transformed absence into a character, a creature made not of flesh, but of pure negation, like a web held together only by the absence of light. Look around you. How many people do you know who have become prisoners of their own hunger for recognition, control, or being right? It's the same essence. Today, the Ungoliant might be hidden in our obsession for likes, status, or money. The form changes, but the void remains the same. It's like walking into a brightly lit room and still only seeing darkness because the shadow already lives within. And perhaps, just perhaps, this is the key to understanding what comes next. Because what Ungoliant did when she distanced herself from Melkor wasn't an act of rebellion, but of voracious independence. She wanted more light, more power, more control. And when the most feared creature of Middle-earth meets the hungriest one, well, the story begins to twist like a web, ready to engulf everything. Avatar. Even the name sounds like a muffled whisper from a corner of the world where no one dares tread. It was there that Ungoliant took refuge, far from mortal and immortal, eyes alike. Imagine a creature so ancient and ravenous that it not only avoided the light, it devoured it. This isn't metaphorical. Literally, she sucked in the light and transformed it into darkness. There was no gentle twilight or poetic shadow. It was a void so dense that even the eyes of the Valar, the gods of Middle-earth, failed to see through it. What's even more curious is that she didn't just absorb light, she rewrote it. With her webs, Ungoliant created an inverted light, a kind of anti-light that swallowed everything around her. It was as if she had hacked reality itself. If this were happening today, it would be like someone using technology to erase traces, rewrite truths, and hide intentions. A form of manipulation that goes beyond the physical. She turned darkness into a shield, a weapon, a refuge, something akin to the algorithms that now hide what we don't want to face. And don't think that this is just mythology. How many times have you seen people building facades, hiding truths behind pretty words, webs of speech, filters, postures, all to mask an inner void that, if left unfilled, devours everything around it? Ungoliant shows us this quite brutally. When someone doesn't know who they are, they consume everything around them in an effort to discover themselves. But instead of building, they destroy. You know that kind of person who enters a room filled with light and, in minutes, seems to drain the energy out of it? The atmosphere shifts, the mood cools. That was Ungoliant. Wherever she went, life extinguished. She wasn't merely in darkness, she was the darkness itself. And the most frightening part is that she relished it. She fed on it. Have you ever met someone who seems more alive when everything is falling apart? Well, that energy isn't new. Tolkien just gave it a form and a name. And what happens when a creature made of pure darkness meets someone intent on extinguishing the light of the world? When the desire for destruction clashes with an insatiable void. Ah, my friend, that is when the darkest alliance of the First Age is woven, thread by thread, among shadows and hidden intentions. At some point, the darkness recognized itself. Ungoliant, that living hunger, and Melkor, the world destroyer, met at the fringes of the world in silence. They did not forge a pact with words, nor seal it with promises. It was a convenient arrangement between two forces that craved everything. Melkor wanted the Silmarils. Ungoliant wanted to devour the light of the two trees. And like old conspirators, they moved together under a shroud of absolute darkness that only she could spin. Imagine this, two of the most feared beings of Middle-earth, walking side by side, wrapped in a veil of shadows so dense that none of the Valar could see them coming. That is the power of manipulation and strategy. Today, the same logic applies. When negative forces unite quietly, they wreak havoc. The difference is that instead of sacred trees, what gets destroyed are relationships, projects, and hopes. Toxic people know all too well how to work together. When there is something to gain, and those who fail to see this alliance become easy prey. The destruction of the trees of Valinor wasn't merely an act of malice. It was a game changer. By draining all the sacred light, Ungoliant wove layers of darkness so profound that history itself was altered. The world lost its source of light, and Middle-earth was never the same again. It's like when something very important shatters in our lives, a trust, a bond, a dream, and everything around us seems to darken. The light vanishes, and what remains? The urge to rebuild, only from a different perspective. Ungoliant wasn't satisfied with merely extinguishing the tree's light. She advanced upon the wells of Varda, sources of luminous, pure water, and devoured them as if they were mere crumbs. It's like someone who, after destroying a friendship, feels compelled to ruin even the good memories. A hunger that knows no bounds. Tolkien doesn't just talk about spiders, he speaks of that which continues to consume even after victory. Envy, pride, and the thirst for control. In Avatar, she was starving. In Valinor, she was voracious. And even after that destruction, something still pulsed in her desire. She wanted more, and wouldn't be satisfied with trees or waters alone. Her eyes had already set on the jewels, on the lingering glow of the Silmarils. And when greedy desires collide, even the darkest alliances teeter on the brink of collapse. It was after the chaos, after darkness spread like black ink across the fabric of the world, that the inevitable occurred. Ungoliant, hungrier than ever, demanded her reward. Melkor, who guarded the Silmarils like a dragon hoarding its gold, hesitated. And there, amidst smoky sighs and palpable tension, the alliance crumbled. The creature that had shrouded the Valar, in darkness, now turned against her ally, proving that even in the depths of shadow, there are fragile hierarchies and inevitable betrayals. After all, those who unite through desire eventually unravel because of hunger. It was a close call. Melkor, cornered like a rat in a cave, nearly became a meal for the very creature he had unleashed. But his Balrogs, fiery shadows, war demons, rushed to his aid. They tore apart the webs, freed their master, and drove. Away Ungoliant with the roar of 1,000 fires. What an irony, a being that devoured light being repelled by fire. Sometimes in real life, the only thing that can dispel inner darkness is a passionate, consuming action. Standing still only fuels the monster. This episode marks something powerful, the breakdown of an alliance fueled by ego. How many times do we see this in business, in friendships, even in love? Alliances built on mere convenience crumble at the first sign of a power struggle. If you want to build something lasting, align yourself with purpose, not necessity. When convenience is the bond, betrayal is only a matter of time. Melkor and Ungoliant serve as a grim example, a lesson that resonates to this day, whether in a boardroom or in hushed behind-the-scenes conversations. And Ungoliant, frustrated, enraged, starving, fled to the mountains. But not just anywhere. She chose the most cursed place in Middle-earth, where her pain and fury could take root and give rise to offspring, and it was in the Mountains of Terror, Ered Gorgoroth, a name that already carries the metallic taste of menace, that Ungoliant took refuge. It wasn't merely an exile, it was a nest, a dark womb where her fury spilled over and took shape. There, far from the light, far from the eyes of the Valar, she wove her own lineage. Offspring, spiders, creatures that weren't born of life. But from its very absence, that place became a cursed territory, an open wound on the map of Middle-earth. Not even the orcs dared cross it. Imagine a place where the very air feels heavy, where each step sinks into dread, where even hope hesitates. That was the domain of Ungoliant and her descendants. She not only survived, she multiplied. And we're not talking about mere creatures. The spiders of Ered Gorgoroth carried within them the essence of the mother, the poison of darkness, and an unending hunger. Once again, Tolkien gives us a symbol. The legacy of what is left unhealed spreads silently, just as untreated traumas create echoes in later generations. And for those who think this is just part of a myth, consider how it reflects on human families, marked by toxic patterns that repeat themselves. Sometimes the Ungoliant in a family isn't a literal creature, but a behavior, a silence, an unspoken secret. And what should die with one generation instead spawns emotional descendants. What you nurture today, be it good or bad, has the potential to become someone else's Ered Gorgoroth tomorrow. In that dark exile, Ungoliant no longer sought the limelight of grand conflicts. She became a myth, yes, but a myth that operated in the shadows, in forgotten corners, and therein lies the danger. What hides does not simply cease to exist. On the contrary, it grows stronger. Like toxic ideas left in obscure corners of the internet, or small groups that feed enormous hatred. Ignoring what lurks in the shadows isn't safety, it's neglect, and those who dared traverse that land, Nan Dungortheb, the valley she tainted, needed more than just courage. They needed luck or the favor of the gods. For even the noblest heroes upon setting foot there had to face not only spiders, but the very limits of sanity. Few places evoked as much revulsion and legend as Nan Dungortheb, the forgotten valley between Ered Gorgoroth and Doriath. The very landscape seemed alive, or rather ravenous. It was there that Ungoliant left her most visceral mark, a dark stain on the fabric of Middle-earth. And yet, some dared to cross it. Elves, men, adventurers, and fools. Among them were Aridel, the noble lady of Gondolin, and Beren, the mortal in love. Both traversed that living inferno and emerged. Transformed, Aridel journeyed through in search of her brother, only to find a forest that seemed to whisper. The air was so dense it was as if the night itself had gained weight. Her garments became soiled, but it was her mind that suffered the most. Tolkien describes that stretch as a true test of sanity. And here's a parallel. Have you ever been through a place or period in life that seemed to drain your very strength just by existing? It might have been a toxic work environment, a draining relationship, or unresolved grief. Those who endure it never return the same. They come back either more aware or more cautious. Then there's Beren, one of the greatest heroes of the First Age, who also set foot in that cursed valley. And note, we're talking about a man who stole a Silmaril from Melkor's crown, yet even he felt the terror of Nan Dungortheb. They say that those who wander there see illusions, hear voices from the past, and relive distorted memories, a place where even hope is questioned. And if we bring this to our world, think about those moments when everything seems to crumble and the inner ghosts grow louder. Such places exist, not geographically but emotionally. Ungoliant had long vanished from the surface, yet her essence still pulsed there. It was as if the very roots of the earth trembled at her name. Tolkien shows us that the true villain does not need to be physically present to instill terror. Sometimes, the emotional impact of someone or something continues to echo long after. A trauma, an abandonment, a deep betrayal, these can become an internal Nan Dungortheb if left unaddressed. And then even the bravest are lost. But there was something even more cruel. The descendants of Ungoliant also inhabited these lands. Giant spiders, inheritors of terror, fed on the weak and tormented any traveler. And among these creatures, one in particular grew in size and malice, one that centuries later would spin its own legend and make it abundantly clear that its mother's dark legacy was far from over. They say that in the end, Ungoliant was consumed by her own hunger, isolated, gigantic, plunging into an abyss, so dark that it seemed like a second world within our own. And there, with no light left to devour, with no allies, with no enemies, she turned against herself. Tolkien doesn't spell it out entirely, but he leaves hints. Could it be that a creature made of emptiness simply ceases to exist when it consumes itself? It's a powerful, symbolic image. How many times in life do we slowly self-sabotage until there's nothing left but an empty shell? But not every end is truly the end. Ungoliant's legacy, like a curse passed from mother to daughter, spread across the ages. Shelob, the spider who terrorized Frodo and Sam in The Lord of the Rings, was one of her descendants, living in solitude, in darkness, waiting. Giant spiders in Mirkwood, confronted by Bilbo and the dwarves, also carried that same dark blood. In their veins, the First Age had ended, but its horrors still roamed the shadows of the Third Age, like an ancient wound that never heals. And it wasn't only a matter of shape or appearance, it was the spirit residing within these creatures. Arrogance, cunning, a twisted pleasure in inciting fear, Spiders like these don't kill solely out of necessity, they kill for the sake of it. And just as in real life, often the deadliest predator isn't the fastest or the strongest, but the one who waits the longest. How many situations have you experienced where danger lurks silently, patiently waiting? That is the essence of Tolkien's spiders, and of Ungoliant herself, waiting for the perfect moment to strike at the weak point. But there's an even deeper lesson. If her hunger was infinite, it was because nothing she consumed ever truly filled her, and that is far more common than it seems. People who spend their lives searching for something external to fill an internal void, whether status, attention, or material consumption, end up like Ungoliant, surrounded by achievements that become tangled webs, trapped in a cycle that only breaks when it's too late. She was a symbol of a desire that spiraled out of control, and every desire without a clear direction tends to devour us. And so, while the heroes of Middle-earth battled dragons, necromancers, and wars, another threat, more silent and ancient, crept along the fringes of the world, reminding us that not everything that passes is forgotten, and that some shadows never completely vanish. And now that you know the true origin of Ungoliant and the spiders of the First Age, the question remains: what are you going to do with this knowledge? Will you simply close this video and go on with your life as if nothing has changed? Or will you start noticing the very shadows that crawl around you and within you? Because believe it, we all have an Ungoliant inside, that ever-hungry void that hides in our impulsive decisions, our unaddressed fears, and the truths we prefer to ignore. Perhaps your darkness isn't in the forests of Mirkwood, but in that project you postponed out of fear. Perhaps it lies in the way you handle failure, or in the very things that consume your time and energy without ever bringing satisfaction. So what will you do? Will you let it slowly devour you, or will you take control of your story, like the heroes of Middle-earth did, facing both inner and outer monsters step by step, even in the face of fear? Tolkien's great lesson is this: even the faintest light can pierce the densest darkness. But action is required. And since you've come this far, having delved into this web of legends with me, it's time to take the next step. Start by asking yourself, what is consuming me today? What am I feeding in my life without even realizing it? If this content moved you in any way, leave a comment down below. I want to know which part struck you the most. And of course, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to keep exploring the secrets of Middle-earth and many other stories that go beyond mere fantasy. The next journey might begin with a click, and who knows, it might be exactly what you needed to hear.